Snyder.
Chapter 7. Unwelcome Welcome. Sebastian Simmons, Upstate Massachusetts, 2018. Our farmland was mostly empty, barren fields of overgrown grass that still sprouted the occasional corn husk every spring. I let neighbors and people from town come as often as they pleased to take as much as they could carry. Some even planted a few things of their own, but nothing of the sort that would draw the wrong kind of attention to my property. But it had been nearly 10 years since I'd bothered to plant anything, and my sentimental fondness of the land was beginning to fade. Our family only bothered to use the house and the barn across from it, but because we lived square in the middle of so many empty acres, it didn't make sense to sell the land without the house. I couldn't trust someone else not to flip it over to big retail like so many have before, so I held on to it, just like I had ever since my father passed away, leaving everything to my brother and me. Only my brother Matthew didn't care to call the farm home. He didn't even care to visit home. And as I sat, holding the phone, ready to call him for the first time in years, I debated whether or not I wanted to invite him back. He'd been temporarily positioned at a military base in Virginia. From what I'd heard, after bumping into an old friend of ours, he was scheduled to leave soon, but couldn't tell me the details of where or when. I'd learned this nearly 3 weeks earlier, and had only just gathered the courage to pick up the phone and actually call him. I leaned forward on my bed, my bad leg stretched out straight in front of me so that I could adjust it every few minutes. My wife was downstairs, pretending to busy herself with housework she'd already done so I could have my space. The twins were coming back from school in an hour, and my son Archer would find his way home just short of finding the end of my patience. I had plenty of time, and no more excuses to put this off any longer. I raised the receiver to my ear and dialed the number, dealt with the operator, and waited to see if he'd answer. "Hello?" "Hey, Matt," I stated, taking in a deep breath. A few moments passed and nothing was said. The last time we'd talked, he'd hung up on me before I could finish saying hello. "It's been a long time. How have you been?" "Same old." "Good. I bumped into Jared Franklin. He told me you're getting out of the service sometime soon. Is that right?" "What did he tell you?" Matt snapped. Paranoid as always about my place in his life. "He just said you're getting out is all." "Quite an accomplishment." 10 years, I continued, small talking around the reason I'd called. "Did you get a medal?" "I get to leave." "They don't give you a medal for that," I joked, adjusting my leg. Matt didn't laugh. It sounded like shit, like something was bothering him even before I called. I made sure to try and keep my tone both upbeat and neutral so I wouldn't think I was provoking or antagonizing him. But as I listened to his uneasy breathing into the receiver, I realized there was little chance of that. "Look, I understand that you felt obligated to make this call, but that doesn't mean we have to talk to each other." I uncomfortably swallowed and looked around the room for something to distract me, any reason to think about anything else. Unfortunately, it was my turn to talk. "What are you going to do now that you're getting out?" "Find something else. I mean, where are you going to go?" I hadn't thought that far ahead. "How far ahead is it?" "Stop it," Matt growled, taking a breath and a pause. "What do you want?" "I want to invite you home," I replied, hoping he'd remain on the line long enough to hear me out, to visit, or maybe to stay for a while. I don't really know, but I wanted to invite you anyway. You know the only reason I'm talking to you is because this is the last time you're going to be able to find my number." "Yeah. I was kind of wondering why you haven't hung up on me yet." "I'm not going to lie, Seb. I think about you from time to time. About your wife and your kids and your house. I think about you and your family and about how I'm not part of that picture for a reason. You still can be. I talked about it with Anna. She'd love to see you again." No, she wouldn't." "Well, I want to see you again," I admitted, realizing it was true as I said it. There was a long pause. I held my breath. it's any consolation, I'm sorry I tried to kill you that day, Matt stated, mentioning what he'd done to me for the first time since he'd done it. But I hate getting reminded that you lived, he finished, smothering any hope I had of having my brother back. Goodbye, Seb. Matt, wait, I exclaimed, hearing the receiver cut out as I said it. I lowered the phone and placed it on the bed beside me. I could hear Anna downstairs, rummaging through a few pots. I reached over for my cane at the bedside and pulled my leg back so I could stand up. I kept one hand against the wall as I made my way to the stairs and walked down to meet her. She stood by the sink, scrubbing a pot so hard I half expected her to file it down to nothing. Elvis was curled up by her feet. He rose his head as I came to Anna's side. She turned and smiled gently, ignoring the phone call I'd just made with the hope that I would too. "What's for dinner?" I asked, folding my arms and leaning against the counter. "Lasagna. One with spinach, no meat. The other with no spinach, extra meat." "And what are the girls doing tonight?" "Ballet and hockey." "You'd think that twins would like more of the same things," I exclaimed, making my wife smile. She put the pot she'd been scrubbing down and swapped it for another. I watched absent-mindedly, in no mood to get back to work or to sit in front of the TV. I couldn't stop thinking about Matthew. "You know, a lot of knick-knack garbage has been blowing around since that mall opened up," Anna commented, annoyed by our new neighbor. "People think that just because there's an empty crop beside the parking lot that they can leave their junk lying around," she continued. "I would have thought that people knew better than that in this town, but—" "I invited Matthew to the house," I interrupted, bringing my brother up despite how my wife got whenever I did. Anna put down the pot and turned slowly to look at me, her face filled with shock and disgust. "I told him he could visit or stay if he wanted." "How could you do that?" she gasped, smacking the sponge she'd been clutching into the sink. "I don't even want to hear that man's name, let alone have him in our house near our children." "I had no choice, Anna." "Why?" she shouted. Elvis slowly pushed himself off his stomach and slunk away into the other room. I looked at Anna in a way that she'd know there was nothing to worry about, but she didn't relax. "I had to ask because there was a chance he could have said yes." "And what did he say?" "He said goodbye," I sighed, watching Anna loosen up as I spoke. "That he doesn't ever want to talk to me again." "Good. At least he has some sense."